Hi there, I am Tom Chick and you are with me in my dining room where we are playing this game here. Actually, we're not playing it yet. I'm doing a lot of Tom-splaining. I'm talking you guys through some of the fundamental elements of it so that when we actually do start playing, you'll have more of a sense of what's going on. We've already talked about where we are. We are inside of a supermassive computer in a dystopia. Who are we? We are hackers. What are we doing? We are trying to maintain our presence in this supermassive computer while it deploys its countermeasures against us. How are we doing that? Well, we are using command cards that give us commands to manipulate, to upload and manipulate contaminants. And those are the fundamentals of this game that I've shown you. Today, I want to tell you the why of this game right here, which I would say the name of, but I'm tired of paying royalties to the band Styx. Why I'm playing this, I already like the stuff that I've showed you. I like the game's vocabulary with its 4 basic colors and what they do and how they interact and how they're expressed. What I really like about this game and what pushes it over the edge and makes it one of my favorites is the way that it's a deck builder distinct from other deck builders. Already now it's working within the confines of not letting you grow or shrink your deck. And those are typical parts of a deck builder. You add good cards to your deck, but you've got the crappy ones that are diluting it, so ideally you also want to remove cards from your deck. No, this game will have none of that. You've got a deck of 15 cards, no more, no less. Each turn you're drawing 5 of them, so therefore you're playing 3 turns. You know, every cycle, every segment of the supermassive computer's countermeasures is 1 cycle. You get 3 turns, you draw 5 cards, that's it. None of this thinning out your deck. None of this worrying about deck bloat, conversely. So how does this game do that? It uses something called the Hack Shack. Now you might think that's a little precious, but I would invite you to read a little bit more William Gibson. That's the kind of language that they use in cyberspace, I suppose. You know, these sorts of hackers, they're punks. They're fast and loose with the language. They'll call something a hack shack. So the Hack Shack and the deck building element of this game is what I really like about it, because what I've showed you previously are the hard and fast rules for how the contaminants and the hackers and the sparks work. We're about to go and break those rules right now with the deck building element of this game, and that's what I want to show you today. And then tomorrow, I promise we're actually going to start playing some games of this right here. But for now, let's go take a look at the Hack Shack. Come with me. All right, so what is the Hack Shack? Oh, shoot a monkey, hold on. Nope, all right, I got so excited I forgot to mark off the calendar buck. It is the 20th of April, 420. April 20th, 2020. Okay, now that we're done with that, now let's go look at the Hack Shack. As I was saying, what is the Hack Shack? When you play this game, you draw a hand of 5 cards, and that's what you're going to get to use during your turn. However, think of the Hack Shack as an expansion of your hand. You've got 5 cards in your hand, but an additional 4 cards that you might be able to use that turn. Let me show you. So here's each hacker's hand. One of the first things you do at the beginning of your turn is make sure that there are 4 Hack Shack cards turned face up. If there are any gaps, if any cards have been removed, one of the first things you're going to do is replace them. So you've always got these 4 cards. Now, naturally, I can use the cards in my hand, and normally what you do is you declare an action, you play the card to give you a certain number and type of commands, and then you execute the action based on what commands you have available. But another thing that you do with a card is called reveal it. And pretty straightforward, but reveal simply means, the idea is that you're holding your cards in your hand, and reveal simply means you would put it face down on the table, and then you can use it freely. And if you don't use it, you can discard it at the end of your turn, but it's for all intents and purposes in your hand. The idea is that any card can only be revealed once a turn. Now that's important because in order to buy a card from the Hack Shack, remember this is a deck builder, you have, hold on a second. In order to buy a card from the Hack Shack, you have to reveal the cost of that card out of your hand. So if we look here at the Hack Shack, these are the cards you can see, similar to the basic cards. These are the commands that this card will give you when you play it. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is the cost of the card. Your starting cards don't have a cost because you got them for free. By the way, this icon just shows that it's part of the starting deck for the green player. It's part of the starting deck for the blue player. So if I want to buy one of these cards, I just reveal that cost. For instance, this Knightum ship is going to cost me 1 information. So I reveal this card, and I have now paid for the Knightum ship. But hold on a second. Remember the hard and fast rule about you're only going to ever have 15 cards in your deck. So another part of the cost of a Hack Shack card is amongst the cards that you revealed to pay the cost, one of them has to be deleted. And then you replace it with the card that you bought, which is now in your hand. You can use it that turn. In a lot of deck builders, when you add a card to your deck, it goes into the discard pile and then will shuffle its way into your deck when the deck is empty and eventually find its way into your hand. In this game, the moment you buy a card, it's in your hand, you can use it. So then even though I am starting my first turn with these basic cards, I can then buy these cards and replace them with better cards that I can use that turn. My starting hand begins with just basic crappy cards, but it doesn't have to stay that way. And then furthermore, when I use these, they're going to get shuffled back into my deck. Any card I buy in the first cycle, I'll use every cycle thereafter, at least once. There's no will I draw it, won't I draw it? Because remember, every cycle you go through your entire deck, which consists of 15 cards. So any cards you previously got from the Hack Shack, you will be getting them into your hand. You will be drawing them. You will be using them each cycle. So let's now look at what some of these cards are, because this is one of my favorite things about this game is how these advanced command cards, that's what they're called, that you get from the Hack Shack, kind of break the rules that this whole system sets out in front of you. Also, this is where you're going to see some of the theming more vividly expressed in this game. With the advanced command cards, which will also have alternate uses, you're going to see a little bit of what each color is getting at in terms of how it ties into the name of the command, whether it's cognition or information, what it actually does in the context of the board. So for instance, let me show you the very basic blue command card, data steal, gives you 1 information command. And what you can do with that is move your hacker 1 space. By the way, so you use standees in this game. From the perspective of that camera up there, you can't really see the standees. So I'm just subbing in these great big colored circles, these discs for the hackers. Hopefully that reads well enough. So at any rate, 1 information lets me move 1 space. Now that's not going to get me very far. Ideally, I will have multiple information commands, and I can use them with data ports and data nodes to move more readily and farther. But let me now show you the Knightum ship. The Knightum ship says you can play it to get an information command, just like the regular default data steal card. However, the text says execute, to instead move from an open partition to any other open partition as a move action. Now, execute is when you play a card, you can either use its commands or its execute. And that's why it's preceded with the word or. None of your basic command cards have execute functions, but almost all of the Hack Shack Almost all of the Hack Shack cards will have an execute option. So right away, you can use them one of two ways, either for their commands or for their text, and sometimes both. You'll see that in a minute. So what is an open partition? What's all this language about moving? Let's say I got moved over here, and all the action you can see is over here. It's going to take me a bunch of movement to get back into the action. An item ship lets me move from an open partition to any other open partition. And an open partition is any partition along the edge of the board. These are closed partitions because they don't touch the edge of the board. These are open partitions. So if I'm just using my basic blue information command cards, poor old Dex over here is going to have a hard time getting back into play. But if I've got this in my hand, maybe I bought it this turn, maybe I bought it previously in one of the earlier cycles. If I've got this in my hand, Dex can move from here to any one of these partitions. And that's an amazing amount of flexibility. Now, I don't know what an item ship is, but, you know, based on the picture, yeah, it's definitely some kind of Tron-looking thing. It's something that flies around out here. So why hoof it? Why drive around amongst the data nodes and data ports when you can fly in an item ship in style? Now, another one of the advanced command cards that uses blue or information is Pied Piper. And this gets into the theming, because if you remember, blue is used for movement, and an item ship moves you around freely. The Pied Piper lets you move something to you. Now, you can use it for its two blue information commands, or you can execute to teleport one contaminant from any partition, anywhere in the network, to your partition. So Dex way over here, if he needed, you know, a virus, he could play the Pied Piper and from any partition, put that there. So suddenly all these rules about shifting and moving over to carry a contaminant around, or maybe having to uplink the contaminant locally, all of them are subverted because a Pied Piper pulls it to you from anywhere on the network. Now I want to show you something else about the Pied Piper. You'll note the item ship, the cost for it is just 1 blue. If I reveal this, now I have paid 1 blue command, 1 information, so I can take the item ship into my hand, and now the rest of the cost for getting a card from the Hack Shack is discard one of the cards you revealed. Excuse me, delete, that's the technical term. So that's now out of play. It's different from discard. Discard means put in your discard pile. Delete means remove from play. But then let's look over here at the Pied Piper. It costs 2 cognition, or 2 green. So if I wanted the Pied Piper, I could use this focus card. I could reveal it to pay my 2 cognition, take the Pied Piper into my hand, and now to finish the cost of it, I'm going to have to delete a card that I revealed to pay for it. This is now out of play. So what I have now just done to this deck of cards is altered the composition from green commands to more blue commands. So if you recall when I laid out all of the starter deck cards before, they consist of the same 12 cards plus a few additional cards that weight that deck towards that hacker's color. So in this case, Dex's deck has now sacrificed some of its green to add additional blue. Each of the colors in this game has cards in the Hack Shack that let you alter the weight of your deck to its complementary color. And because these are double-sided, there's a data port on one side and an uplink, a data node on one side and an uplink on the other. The replicators have viruses on the other side. Red and yellow are complementary, blue and green are complementary. There are cards that let you alter the shift of a blue deck towards a green deck and vice versa, as well as a red deck towards a yellow deck and vice versa. Because remember, the blue and green cards are about moving stuff and manipulating things on the board. The red and yellow commands and cards are about removing and modifying, about getting rid of these sparks. So then let's look at a couple of the red cards that you can find in the Hack Shack. The overwrite interrupt, which is just going to cost a single destruction command, is going to let you interrupt another action. Now, you know what an interrupt is. You've played card games before. You can use this on any other player's turn. Furthermore, you can use it anytime during your turn. Most of these cards will power actions, where you declare the action, you play the command cards to get the commands, and then you do the action. You can't then willy-nilly fold actions into other actions. There's no nesting like that. But there are a few cards that allow interrupts. And an overwrite interrupt, after the fact, after you've already rolled the dice during an infect action, lets you add 2 to your result. So you failed by a couple of points on your die roll. Oops, overwrite interrupt to the rescue. Or alternatively, another player failed his or her infect roll. Well, I've got this that I was sitting on. Let me play this on your behalf and alter your roll. The sidekick does a couple of things. The main thing it does is you just play it, you use its executability to delete a spark on your partition or on an adjacent partition. You don't have to run over there and drag with you some viruses and do an infect action. Nope, you just play your sidekick and then boom, that spark is gone, either locally or adjacent. Just throw a sidekick down, any spark, it's out of your way. But also what it does is it only costs a single destruction command. But it's going to then add to my deck 2 destruction commands. It has increased the total commands in my deck by 1. I only spent the single destruction command to add this to my deck, but in addition to the awesome execute action, I also now have 2 destruction commands on this card. Whether I use it for the execute or for the commands, it's way better than the lowly little single destruction card that I had to burn out of my deck to get it. Let's now look at some of the yellow and green Hack Shack cards. Duality is a great example of yellow being a deception command. It's a tricky little gimmick that you can use. It's only going to cost you a single deception to put it into your deck. It's only going to give you a single deception, so it's not altering the total commands in your deck. But its execute action is this fun little mischievous ability to flip one contaminant. So if Tilda Sweet is here and she really needs that 3rd virus to build a propagator, she can play duality and flip that to its red side. That's again getting to that whole red-yellow complementary color scheme and blue-red complementary color scheme. If she really wants to get an information port here, she can flip this uplink to its information node, and then she'll be able to use these 3 information nodes to install an information port. Oh, it's a data port, not an information port. What's the difference between data and information? They're the same. Now, the self-modifying inhibitor is a great way to use the modify action without going through the hassle of using the modify action. If you recall, when I use modify, it's going to take advantage of these replicants. They must outnumber sparks on their partitions, and then they convert that spark to a contaminant of any color they want based on what command that you've paid. But you remember, you have to set that up by getting the correct number of replicants in place. A self-modifying inhibitor, it just says, you know what, don't worry about the rules. You just play this for its execute action, and you take a spark off of the partition and immediately replace it with a replicant. Super easy. And I want to show you something else that you have done to your deck when you add a self-modifying inhibitor. If I want this to be part of my deck, if I want to buy it from the Hack Shack, I'm going to have to spend 2 deception commands. So I take this card, I reveal it to show 2 deception commands. I then take the self-modifying inhibitor. I must now delete one of the cards that I revealed. Now I have changed 2 deception commands in my deck to a deception command and a leadership command. Now, we haven't talked a lot about leadership, but leadership is wild. You play a leadership command, it can be any of the other 4 commands that you want. It's uniquely useful and uniquely flexible in that you don't have to actually have the color you want. Just have leadership, it's any color. So by adding the self-modifying inhibitor, I've added 1 additional leadership command that I didn't previously have in my deck. Okay, now I want to show you one of my favorite cards which at first, when I first started playing, I was like, this is a dumb card. I would never use this. This is a Chino bracelet. I paid 2 destruction commands to get it into my deck. So it's one of those things where you are altering the overall composition of your deck's commands from red to yellow. You know, viruses are great, but they tend to usually involve a random number. I would rather rely on modifying sparks rather than infecting them. So the Chino bracelet has helped that by adding these deception commands where previously I had these destruction commands. And the way the Chino bracelet works, in addition to just being 2 deception commands, is I can use it as an interrupt, and it says play this card with one other card to have this card produce the same commands as that card. So whether it's my turn or another hacker's turn, I can play a card, and then whatever commands are on that card, if I add a Chino bracelet, they're basically doubled. So in this situation, let's say it's Tilda Sweet's turn, and poor Dax is stuck over here, and he doesn't have an item ship to fly around. He can only afford a single information to move 1 space. I can then play this decrypt with a Chino bracelet and give him 4 additional information commands, and he can go 1, 2, 3, 4. I've just helped him cross the whole network. And not just with, of course, information commands. I can do that with any command, whether we're talking about deception, information, cognition, or destruction. The Chino bracelet just doubles any card's commands. It just pours extra effort into whatever you're doing. Now, in a situation like with infecting, where the number of destruction commands that you play are added to the number of viruses on the partition in your die roll, there it's hugely helpful to just pour in a ton of commands. Chino bracelets are great for infecting sparks. They're great too if you've just got a little piddly 1 command card and you really need to get 2 commands out of it. The Chino bracelet at first might look like something like, why do I want that? But once you start folding it into your strategies, once you start realizing, oh, here's how I can use it, and especially once you start taking advantage of the fact that it's an interrupt, you'll never want to leave home without a Chino bracelet. Okay, now I want to show you some of the green cognition advanced command cards. Digital tattoo. Doesn't seem like much of a bargain. You have paid 1 cognition, and it's only going to give you 1 cognition. However, it has a keyword of also, meaning when you spend that command on that card, when you spend that single cognition, when it's used as part of a shop action, it also generates 1 leadership, which is 1 wild command, 1 color of icon of your choice. So again, you might be thinking, so what? So keep in mind that when it's used as part of a shop action, meaning buying something from the Hack Shack, a shop action, buying something from the Hack Shack, you just reveal the cards. Now you're going to have to burn 1 of them out of your deck because the card you bought will replace it. But the cards that you revealed, you can still play normally. So when you reveal this, it's in your hand, you want to buy something from the Hack Shack, you pay whatever it costs, you just reveal this. And it's been revealed, you can't reveal it again, but you can still play it for its green cognition. But what you've done by revealing it is added any 1 color. So if you really wanted to buy an expensive Hack Shack card, and you haven't seen any yet, but I'm going to show you some of those, or a Hack Shack card that requires leadership to pay for it, or you just are missing 1 of the commands that you need to get that card you really want, you just flash your digital tattoo. You're not burning it, you're just showing it, and you're getting a free command towards your purchase. Okay, Adrenaline Surge gets at something that's pretty counterintuitive, but very important in this game. When I pay commands to do an action, I can overpay freely. If I want to move 1 space, if I want to move decks from this partition to this partition, I pay 1 information. Now, if I wanted, I could pay 1 information and 1 cognition and 3 destruction. I could do that. I can freely overpay. And you might think, okay, what's the point of that? Well, when you're buying something from the Hack Shack, and when you're really playing this game as a deck builder, let's say you wanted to buy that Chino bracelet. You've got the 2 destruction commands here. You reveal the card. You then have paid the 2 destruction commands. You put the Chino bracelet in your hand, and you then delete one of the cards that you used to pay the cost. Now, this being a deck builder, it still does have that element of some cards are better than others. This card gives me 2 commands. This card only gives me 1. In a way, I mean, it's, of course, depends on the situation, but this card is objectively better than this card, all things being equal in terms of the situation. So I want to show you, if I were to buy this Chino bracelet, but I did not want to get rid of this card. I did not want to delete it. Let me show you a trick. There's the Chino bracelet. Here's my hand of cards. To buy it, I have to reveal 2 destruction commands. 2 destruction commands revealed. Now remember, I can freely overpay. I'm going to overpay with a cognition command. So I've paid the cost of the Chino bracelet. I put it in my hand. Now I have to delete one of the cards I used to pay the cost. I can delete this card instead of this one. So what I did was I got a Chino bracelet. I did have to reveal this, but I didn't have to burn it. When I bought the Chino bracelet, I instead burned this crappy little single cognition card out of my deck and replaced it with this. Cheating? I know, I thought the same thing, but it's allowed, it's encouraged, it's part of the gameplay here. This is, after all, a deck builder where getting rid of crappy cards and replacing them with better cards is a fundamental part of what you're doing. So the concept that you can freely overpay in this game is huge. And let me now show you how it applies to this card here, Adrenaline Surge. Now, Adrenaline Surge is an also card, meaning you have used its commands to pay for an action, and then you also use its text. Let's see what it says. Also, when this card is used as part of an upload action, and remember, uploading is where you pay 3 commands to put a contaminant on your partition of that color. When this card is used as part of an upload action, you may upload 1 additional contaminant of that type to that partition. So, I paid my 3 commands to upload the contaminant of a color that I want, and then I add to that the Adrenaline Surge and add a second contaminant. Now, you might think, oh, but it's green cognition commands. You can only use it when you're uploading green contaminants, right? You can only use it when you're uploading uplinks. No, not at all. Remember the rule about overpaying. Let's say that I am right here. Tilda Sweet is here and she needs to move over here and modify this spark. So let's say this is Tilda Sweet's hand. She needs to pay 3 deception commands to upload 1 replicant. So she pays these, they go to her discard pile, and she uploads a replicant. Now she ideally wants to move over and carry this replicant to this partition to modify this spark. But remember, the rule for modifying is your replicants must outnumber the sparks. So she's not going to be able to do that unless she can upload a second replicant to carry over here. So let's back up and have her pay these 3 cognition commands to upload this replicant, and then in addition, pay these 2 useless cognitions to use the also function of the Adrenaline Surge. She is now adding a second contaminant of that color. She is now, with these cards, buying 2 replicants. These green things are just overpayment. They didn't matter. By adding an Adrenaline Surge to any upload action, you're getting a second contaminant out of that action. It doesn't matter that it was green. It doesn't matter that you overpaid 2 cognition commands. What matters is that you added the also text of the Adrenaline Surge to your upload action. So Tilda Sweet now has 2 replicants. She discards these cards. She pays 1 information to move here and carry these with her. And then she modifies it, this is leadership, so she will turn this spark into whatever color contaminant that she wants. Thank you, Adrenaline Surge. So these 4 cards over here in the Hack Shack, whatever is showing at the beginning of your turn, These you can easily, relatively easily, get into your hand and do all sorts of tricky things above and beyond the basic rules of the game. And those are just the basic cards. I haven't even shown you the really cool ones yet, because for each color in this game, you've seen the cards that cost 1 and 2 commands. Each color also has a card that costs 3 commands and adds 2 leaderships and 1 command of that color. They're basically the uber cards for that color. I'm not even going to show you those. You'll see those maybe when we do a playthrough, but I will show you real quickly. Look at this nonsense. Look at all those leadership commands. They're all wild. Look at those costs, 1 of each. And look at this, Console Cowboy. You paid 3 leadership for it. You're getting 4 wilds with a single card. Think about what that does to the overall composition of your deck, to the number and type of commands you can now execute with your deck. And I'm not even going to tell you guys the text here, because this stuff is it's off the charts. This is the kind of stuff that, for me, expresses a fundamental concept of good game design, and that is set rules, set limits, and then break them. These cards specifically, and generally most of the cards, all of the cards in the Hack Shack, in some way break one of the rules in this game. And it is why I play Renegade. I really, you start with the same starting cards, your character has an ability, but over the course of playing, as this map develops, the Hack Shack cards add all sorts of new, crazy, interesting, flexible, varied ways to flex these rules, to implement different strategies, to address different situations. And it just turns what might look like a weirdly abstract circles and squares and colors and hexes game into off-the-rails, crazy cyberpunk / cyberspace epic hacker battle. All of this stuff becomes, and there's a puzzle element to it, which is why it kind of reminds me of Mage Knight. But whereas Mage Knight just felt very kind of cold and weird and slow and plodding and methodical, the pacing in this is just crazy for how you're going to quickly get these insane cards into the mix. In the very first cycle, by the way, the very first turn of the very first cycle, you can bring one of these cards into play. In fact, you can damn sure bet if one of these shows up on my first turn, if the Hack Shack puts up for sale one of these on my first turn, I'm going to do everything I can to get it into play. Because the earlier you get it into play, the more you're going to get to use it. And that's just a fundamental part of how deck builders work. So, all right, I've got myself now super excited to actually play this game right here, which we're going to do starting tomorrow. It is, for me, a super thinky game. A lot of me playing this game is going to look like this. And it's going to go that quickly. Fortunately, due to the magic of editing, I'll try to make that go a little faster, but I will be showing you guys actual gameplay starting tomorrow. Come back for that. Take care of yourselves. I hope everyone had a good Monday. Yeah, it's Monday. And I'll see you tomorrow. Cheers. Oh, shoot a monkey.